How we looking, guys? I don't know what happened, but like Streamlabs updated itself, and then it was just like, I don't know at all, and I'm not gonna even posit it because I don't know why. Like, it's still telling me how it lost frames over 2 minutes ago, and I'm like, stop. I know you're losing frames. Hell, you could have picked them up. It would have been nice. Please. Get these hot frames. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody, for late start. Even by my standards. But yeah, it looks like that. When up for captions. Where's my captions? Streamlabs has been fucking them for everyone. Awesome. Good jobs. Well, the problem is, it's like, I don't have an issue running. I feel like some people have an issue with running slobs because of their system. And my system is pretty B, so running Streamlabs is... Every time I end up leaving Streamlabs, I end up being annoyed by all the extra stuff I end up having to do. And because I haven't really had a performance issue, it hasn't really been that big of a deal for me. But if this stays, then but I've played around with the others, and you know, one day maybe someone will make an actual good streaming. Oh yeah, that's not what we're here for today, and I certainly don't want to talk about them. Welcome to Taco Tuesday, for real this time. I should actually send out a real, actual tweet message and be like, "Hey, I unfucked myself. It's go time now." How's everybody doing today?
At the end of the day, we're gonna find out it's not about the white hot space, but it's about finding the truth. That white hot space, people think is the biggest thing, but it's really small. It's almost like a trend. Would you rather be a trend, or you rather be Ralph Lauren? You know what I mean? Like, you rather be a trend, or you rather be forever? I'm the person that...
Not too bad, not too bad. Good to see you doing good. Sword on the range. How are you doing today?
Right, I play forever. I play forever.
What's up, Nora Enigma? How you doing, buddy?
Not to be the youngest, hottest,
Hanging in there, still debugging Twine stuff. Twine is the devil. Said it once, I'll say it again. It makes me sad inside. I don't know how you programmers do it. I appreciate y'all. I know how you do it. Okay. There we go. Done my due diligence. Everybody who needs to know knows. And now we can start the show. Huzzah! Okay. What up, Chile? Thanks for the host, buddy. I appreciate it. Watching Book of Eli. Yeah, I saw you talking about Book of Eli. Was it you talking about Book of Eli being a paladin? Or was there somebody else who was also watching Book of Eli? You know what? I actually need to sit down and finish Book of Eli. I started watching it, and it just wasn't my vibe that day. It was no knock on the movie. I was just like, oh, this is going to be heavier than I thought today. No, I'm not in the mood for it. So I need to put that on my list. Go back and watch it. So yeah, I've heard good things about it. So they have just been more into TV shows for some reason, either be docu-series or whatnot. But I need to come around and get back into movies and whatnot. Programming hell's programming hell. That's the truth, that's the truth. That's the truth. Oh, for real, it's much more meaty than advertisement. Yeah. Yeah, and I could tell real quick. I was like, okay, this isn't gonna be as popcorn as I thought. Cool, we're gonna put this in the comeback when I'm in the mood to really be a real person. All right, so I hope everyone saw the post yesterday about spirit investigators and Atoners. Haven't you? I guess I could probably throw up a link on the website to where I have them. Well, get that free traffic. So, for some reason the other day I realized that a lot of people weren't talking about a number of the professions. For some reason, like a proud world building pop, I was like, that's not okay. All my kids need love. So, I don't know if I'm gonna do them all as like verses, but I thought it was a cool like those in particular have a nice sort of balance to it. A toner versus spirit investigator. It's not really a versus per se, right? It just has that feel to it. So I kind of wanted just to get people thinking about it, and a lot of people responded. So obviously, it's one of those things that people connected. I'm actually gonna redo that page here, not too long. But anyway, that's something about the profession. So to kind of go over professions real quick for those people that aren't super familiar with professions in Swordsfall. I call them professions instead of. It's a little more encompassing than how we think of as class, especially tabletop RPG. I thought more about in terms of less class as your identity as a person and more as a profession in terms of you expressing yourself. I think it's easy to take them the same way, but there's really a difference. Profession, and especially the way that I describe it in Swordsfall, it's something you build up to. The difference between an astronaut versus an astronaut is a profession because it is attainable, but it's also a dream. But you can sit down and learn things and do things to become an astronaut. And with that, there's an assumption of things that you are capable of. When you say, hey, I'm an astronaut, people's minds think of certain things. Versus, once again, in an RPG or something like that, you say warrior. Well, what does that mean, though? Like, warrior school, like, thief, like, if I just steal something out of someone's pocket, am I a thief now? Did that class change? You know, so like I wanted it to be more crunchy, but not in a math way, but in spirit of the lore. So when you hear a profession in Swordsfall, it automatically means that they have done something. You don't accidentally trip and fall into a profession. Almost all have either some sort of special training or education, or there's something specific that gives them that title that says profession. When someone says celestial, I'm a celestial shield, it hits different. That's like saying I'm a doctor, PhD. Like that's how. Oh, okay, Mr. Big Deal over here. That's not to say that there's everybody is professional, right? It's just that that's my kind of way of separating people out into like the quote unquote hero. Rather than saying that like you're automatically superheroes, basically saying that like when you say you're a certain profession, you're only that because you did X things to get to that point, right? You've almost set your backstory by saying you are X, because there are certain things you had to do to become that. Now, how your character did those things is your backstory, right? For instance, I always like to use Celestial Shield a lot just because it's kind of the more meatier of the classes and it kind of easier to hold on to. But for like a Celestial Shield, for instance, it doesn't really matter what kind of person you are. If your character is a Celestial Shield, that automatically means you had almost 18 years of schooling, because all Celestial Shields come from their own schools. That's how you become a Celestial Shield. You just don't grab a shield and say, hey, I'm a Celestial Shield. That's not how it works. You can't even use a Star Shield. Like, So there's all that stuff that goes along with it, right? But that doesn't mean that you're a carbon copy out of it. You like think about y'all at some point have gone to some sort of schooling, make some assumptions, but like especially in America, that's a thing. You can't get around that. That doesn't mean we all come out the same. Like we all take lessons differently, you know. Were you top of your class at Celestial Shield? Were you the person who walked in and you were like, I want to be a big damn hero? And you showed up to every class, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, front of the class. You wrote down notes. You like stocked all your Ijons and the Temple Masters. You know, like, were you that person? Or were you the person who was like, yeah, it's Celestial Shield, but at the end of the day, your parents kind of dropped you off there when you were a kid and said, this is your duty, and you're like, cool, I guess. And you know, you feel for it, but Celestial Shield. So maybe when you graduate, you heard rumors that you've heard some people who could use somebody with the skills of Celestial. You weren't really there to be a big damn hero, but hey, here you are. Both Celestial Shields, but both can be played different, even though you had to go through like these things. So that's the big thing about professions in Swordsfall. I call them professionals, just like someone will call them like heroes or something. You know, your average person isn't nothing. It's just like the average person is more like. So someone asked on Twitter like what the passive, and I just didn't feel like having a. So I hope that you're here and watching on Twitch, for you. But the way to think of it is that in Tycor, everybody has access to magic. But on Tycor, in Swordsfall, they call that Hakan. Hakan itself is the principle of molding these energies that are in you or in other things or through gods to do stuff. In Hakan, through that sort of principle of using it, there's 3 paths that they can. One of them is divination, the second one is spirit possession, and the third one is invocation. And those are the 3 paths of Hakan. All the professions somehow fit within one of those 3, right? Because those are basically your 3 ways of being able to interacting with this flow of energy. And one of the things I use as the metaphor is a river, right? Because ether force, which is, I guess, like you could say your mana, but it's a little bit deeper than that. Ether force is technically what you're tapping into. Moving river of energy. You're right. Divination is what I consider basically dipping your face into the river. You're not getting into this energy river. You're not dumping into it. It's not a part of you, but you're just looking into it. And in a sense, that's what divination is. It's the people who are like invocators will say it's the easy. Really, it's not. It's just the one that touches the energy the least. But in that gives it perspective, because since it's only putting its face in the river, it can see what's going on. It can see the currents, but it can also pull its head back and also see the bigger picture. And that's kind of what like divination is all about. So that's how you get stuff like things like that. It's an extension of that bigger concept. And invocation, I guess we'll go in order. Spirit possession, right, is basically dunking your head in and then swallowing the water, taking it into you. It's a part of you, but it's a force. It's a current. If you wanted certain kind of water from certain different kind of places, maybe go a different kind of a river, you know. But that is spirit possession. Much around, like there's those sort of men. And the invoker jumps into the river and starts using the river, starts splashing it, starts using the water. It learns it as a tool. The invokers are the ones that we think of like as your flashy class. Like Celestial Shield is an invoker because it's taking that energy, that ether, that force, and directing it and using it. But it also requires you as an individual to have a really powerful sense of gravity, because you have to withstand. And that makes it technically the hardest, but only in the hardest in the fact that like bad invocation can lead to very, very bad things. So you don't do it without preparation. Yeah. A little Deku in that power. Yeah, so those are the three Hakan paths, and everything fits in that. And people who aren't professionals, right, they basically stopped at the ground floor. They're just a divination, and we call those diviners. Nothing wrong with being a diviner at all, because the world needs jack of all trades. The world needs people who just know how it generally works and didn't get sucked into specialization. Sure, Celestial Shield knows how to invoke, but they spent all their life invoking one way. A generalized invoker, who's someone who just deals invocation, sure, maybe they can't call down Pangol gods and change shields into 89 shapes, but they can do some really cool general invocations that I guarantee you're going to need in just a general living, breathing, existing society sort of sense. I mean, it's like the classic sense of, sure, like, we celebrate this person, but who makes the nail? Because a nail is important, and when you need a nail, nothing substitutes that. And that's kind of how, like, general people fit. And in that, there's like a sort of natural balance, because some professions require other professions. Some professions kind of naturally conflict with others. And that's kind of what I want to get into with like Atoners and Investigators, because they're similar but also conflicting in a way. Yeah, just because you went to school don't mean you're a good student. Yeah, no, that's the truth, And that's a story in itself. Like, there really is an interesting story about the person who just got through school because they had to, but now, kind of like how an education will cover XYZ, but different people take certain things from it. Exactly. And also, there's like room in there for individuality, right? There's like, for instance, when it comes to celestial shields, there's different temples that are different places, right? So that means a different temple master, which means a different philosophy of thought, a different Pangol god is going to be the center of it. So there's change in that in itself. And pretty much you can apply to just about anything. Which kind of flavors how the characters interpret their education in the impression. LeBron likes Taco Tuesdays. Who doesn't like Taco Tuesdays? Okay, so where do we start? I guess we'll start with some structure. So, spirits are everywhere. It's a principle that is really prevalent in just about every different African. And especially like in a Black America sense, like how we feel about spirits, and even if you're not religious or whatnot, it's a current thing. I wanted to take that kind of concept and I wanted to make it not just something that's scary. I didn't want it to be a game where every time you see a spirit, it's something to kill or it's something to feed. I wanted spirits to be normal enough to where you can be like, oh yeah, I saw like the spirit of my like uncle the other day, and someone's like, oh yeah, what did it say? I want it to be like that. I want it to be that level of normal, but just because it's normal doesn't always mean everything. Life is complex in that. So in that, like, there's different professions that spawn out of basically the interaction with the spirit realm, and it's not just humans, because humans aren't the only things that are alive. It's just that when it comes to human spirits, they're the only ones that we generally get to interact with. People do end up dealing with animal spirits. Usually not in the good ways. So that usually means that they end up having to deal with like whoever is there, like the animal kingdom, to try to do. So there's rules to the spirit realm that humans are constantly trying to figure out, why things change, trying to keep up with it. And so that's in itself why you have these different professions that all deal with spirit. Now, spirits are all around Tycor, but they interact with people differently depending on where you are. They are different depending on where they are. When it comes to somewhere like Vinyata has a very particular way that it likes to bury its dead. So spirits are something that don't really roam around. They have more of a sense of, you get to sleep, this is your long rest. If we need you, we'll call you, and there's like a sort of, yeah, cool, like, I'm gonna go sleep, let me know if you need me. Folklore is very different in its sense because of the fact that spirits kind of obey Haken. when you have a god who has the territory, I want to kind of question people like, how is the hierarchy? Like, is the spirit more powerful than the god or less powerful than the god? As far as people concerned in Huck lore, everything bends. In Grimnest, spirits are something that very much interact with people. It's something that they not only embrace, but you would be more likely to be sad if you didn't have a chance to interact with like spirits of, like, that's a sign of a healthy home, a healthy house in Grimnest is how connected you are to like your spiritual ancestors. And then you get to Garuda. And Garuda has a steady problem that you'll see throughout Tycoon. The fact that of all the nations and all the countries, Garuda has the most land, has the most diversity when it comes to the fact that in what it calls itself a country, it deals with humans, it deals with spirits, animal kingdoms, it has to deal with monsters. It's where the rock shop first showed up. Garuda is always the center of something. So it tends to have to govern itself around the fact that it seems to be the center of attention, whether it wants to or not. So in that, in the Divine Order of the Phoenix, which is basically the name of the governmental body that kind of rules slash like really honestly more it tries to keep things contained. It's not necessarily government in the way that we think of the US government, where it's like you can't do something because of it. It's more like the Divine Order really does try to like it's in the name itself. It truly is. They really do think of themselves as an order, and they try to help keep order. Not necessarily control, but like keep the rails from coming off. How much they do a good job of it kind of depends on who you ask, because like any governmental body, not everybody's happy at all times. But over the years, as spirit issues kind of changed and grew, it was about around like the 1700s when there was an epidemic called a green fever. And you can read more about that in One Anvil. But basically what happened is the crew basically ended up having to deal with a pandemic. Which is funny that I wrote, like, this is literally something I wrote like a year plus ago, y'all. Like, I can't get you enough. But anyway, so this pandemic basically killed a lot of them, and it ended up being one of the central things that actually brought like the Karoo versus the Drakon, because the Karoo were having it, Drakon not so much. And rumors start to spread, and in between the pandemic and stuff like that, that was really when the relations got the worst. But on top of that, as people died, not necessarily unnatural deaths, but not peaceful deaths that changed what happened when people came back as spirits. Or not everybody comes back as a spirit, mind you. But when things are bad, generally more people come back as spirits, and they usually come back more as not fun spirits. So the Divine Order had to figure out what they were going to do, how they were going to deal with this rise of spirit activity. So the Department of Spirit Inquiry was founded, and it's kind of under the Divine Order of Phoenix. Like, on paper it is, but it has its own sense of autonomy, because spirits don't really care about jurisdiction per se. They don't care about national borders. And so out of just about few places when it comes to something under government, the Department of Spirit Inquiry kind of has its own sense of autonomy. It gets to go somewhere. It's the Ghostbusters, but not Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters slash counselors slash wranglers slash interpreters. I mean, like there's a variety of things that have to be dealt with when it comes to spirits. Ghost FBI, yeah, kind of, yeah. Ghost FBI. See, now I have to put in ghosts like Delia Moller and some. But anyway, so the Department of Spirit Inquiry is like your main agency, your main body that deals with some of the weirder stuff that happens with. If you have an issue with spirit activity and for some reason either where you are can't handle it, like let's say your local spirit medium where you live, it's a problem too big for them, they'll call the Department of Spirit Inquiry. Or more importantly, they will put in an inquiry to the department, which is why it's called. Because different things require different solutions. And that's where you get into the Atoners and the Spirit Investigators. There's also some other ones like Soul Ritz, which isn't like the source of this one, but we'll talk about them a little bit later because I think And basically, the way I like to think of it is there's like a almost like a classification system, right? Because some things are meh. You know, if there's let's say you just have some minor trickster spirit because a practical jokester who died and just the joke just refused to die. Yeah, that's important because you know, like, there's nothing worse than like somebody trying to mess with you in terms of like bad practical jokes right now. But it's not as bad as the spirit who's gone murderous, right? So they have like their own system. I haven't fully thought about how I want to do it. I kind of like the cheekiness of a color coded system. We got a code red. Um, but they go through the inquiries that go. They go through the stories that happen, and they assign it. Right, things are really bad. They have their own internal mixture of people that they might send to go out to deal with investigators. But generally, they work based on almost like a little like Monster Hunter ish, right? Where there's sort of a board that they'll put inquiries on that people can basically take, and that's where Atoners and Spirit Investigators come. Because some cases the department will call them in. They might, but they're gonna call in the best of the best on something that's like really either sensitive or something like old level red. But in general, the best way to deal with this stuff, and especially because they'll get inquiries worldwide, is to put it on this board, and whoever wants to get it can get it. You know, there are some people who will travel around the world to these inquiries. Sometimes it just ends up being your local person, you know, stuff like that. But that's where the differences start to happen, because how someone wants to have an issue resolved, well, that's up to you. Also, it's not always the living that put in inquiries. Spirits are spirits, and sometimes spirits will put in their own inquiry to the department. The department actually has, in a sense, its own window specifically to take in spirit requests. The spirits actually cannot come into the department, right? The department's made, the building that the department is in, its nickname is cheekily the house. It's specifically made with a material that basically wards. And the concept is that they realized that they needed to have a place that could be free of spirit intrusion, and also a place that a spirit couldn't leave in case there was a spirit that they had to contain. Sometimes some spirits do not move quietly onto the sunset, and you can't make it. So some spirits do have to just be contained. Doesn't happen very often, every once in a while, but that's also where they are too, deep below it, somewhere in the Department of Spirit Inquiry. But I like to think there's almost like a nice little like window outside, and there's like spirits that line up, and spirit, you know, does this little spirit floaty by. Need to put in for an inquiry. Like, oh, how can I help you today? What can I do for you? Like, yes, I think I died, and then I don't know why. Can you help me? Someone's like, oh yes, we can take your number, and do you remember what your name is? And you know, like, does all the things because it's spirits. It doesn't shock anyone. It's just a question of cool, like, what's the procedure? What happened? How can we help this person? And that's basically what happens. And then it goes through the system, it gets assigned, whatnot, and then it happens. Not everything has to go through the Department of Spirit and Cream. It's just that it's a formal body that's meant to specifically help with that kind of stuff. But sometimes a spirit might go directly to a person. Sometimes an Atoner's looking for something. Sometimes a spirit investigator needs a new case, right? So there's like a whole moving system that happens. Atoners are your sort of person in a black hat, here to take vengeance, right? Because there are some times where someone dies in a bad way and they remember it. They remember it enough to know that it was bad, but not enough to be able to say that, hey, it was this person what they need to finish. Because dying does weird things to people. Souls, spirits. Atoners feed off of that. They get powered up by the vengeance of the spirit. So Atoners are there for pretty much one reason and one reason only. When bad things happen to people and they die and become spirits, they're the ones who get revenge. Or vengeance, depends how you want to look at it. And especially in some of your places like Grimnest, where there is no official government, that's where you see the majority of Atoners. Your Grimnest, your outskirts of Vinyata, stuff like that, where there's a little bit more people who fall through the cracks because there is no safety net per se. The Atoners like to act as the safety net, and in that they have this sort of once they have their mark made, like they never miss. Like I wanted them to have this sort of cold revenge of death sort of thing, you know? Because like just me personally, I could definitely understand. Like I had to think to myself, like, what happens to people when they die in a really bad? And if you have a world where spirits are a thing and it's a constant thing, then what happens to, how do you give a voice to a spirit? You always trust a spirit. Can spirits lie? Can they tell the truth and whatnot? And so that's kind of where I imagine, like, that's where humans sort of pair up with, you know, like the way that we sort of figure out how to make a science of something, how to try to find stability in something, along with the weird perspective that might come from being dead, like being removed from all the weird things that we have to just to be alive. You know, like a spirit can actually just focus on the facts of the matter, and also be coldly detached about it. And so like that's where you get these really interesting ways to actually solve mixing human with man. I feel like there's so many options here but use about bringing back spirits, but I think it's so cool something based solely, because I really want to hit home that like you die, but it's not game over. The black hat is certainly appealing at times. Sometimes you gotta like just good for decoration. The bet you thought you got away with a unit. Law and Order Remember Me unit. Yes, I remember those books. Did you ever read the Remember Me books? Was that throwback specifically nowhere? Because if so, I'm here for it. I die and become Agent Cooper. I mean, yeah, why not? And in a way though, it's always like a temporary partner, you know, because in a way the goal is to go to whatever next step. Because I don't want to say that there's like a necessary order, because but either way, a spirit lingering near the mortal world in like a really bad way isn't good for it. So it's kind of like a temporary partner until it's gone. It's like your temporary partner on a revenge movie. Why is there a spider crawling? Eat a dick. Oh, he jumped. Fuck you. I'm watching. I'm about to slap the shit out of his son. Oh. Fuck out of the spider on stream. Man, came to the wrong house, homie. Right as shit. Ah!
Oh, there it is.
Where?
It's hanging.
Oh, clap that shit. Ha! Gotcha! Sorry for that. I'm not sorry about that. I love that the captions kept going. I don't know what the captions said, but anyway. Thoroughly dead. Here with a whole bunch of ears. Sorry about that. Did it actually attenuate like I needed it to? See now, toner for that spider put 3 on your ass. True. I mean, it's true. I'm gonna have to put up some words tonight. Can't have that shit. Right? Exactly. That's why thank you, Seeker. Yeah, what was that? That shit distracted the fuck out of me. I just saw like some like you know, you see like motion in the corner and you're just like fuck. Too bold. Um, proper lost my train of thought, bro. Like all the way. Okay. That spider spirit definitely didn't go gentle. He did not go gentle into the night. Nope, he did not. I mean, that's what happens though. Like you gotta know when to pack it up and go home, or not. Like bad things happen. Just saying. So anyway, about Atoners. So I don't want to stereotype Atoners per se because I don't want it to be like that. But it definitely is a little bit about that cold-hearted need for payback. Because I don't know, in a weird way, like when I was thinking about Atoners, I imagine like every time I would watch like a movie where something bad would happen to someone innocent, and I'm just like, when is someone gonna like just bust on this door and just go like hardcore like man on fire? I don't know. Sometimes you see something, you're like, nope. You're like, nope. Them specifically, fuck them. Like, you know, like it's just, and I like to imagine that there's someone who, when it came to how they feel about people dying and moving on, they were the ones who just had that no, that's not okay. Like the person who wants to maybe send the message a little bit too much, because there is a sense of, you're a bounty hunter, right? When you're an Atoner, basically, you're not solving cases. You're putting bullets in people. You're finding this cold sort of justice. You're not out here like solving cat cases. You're not out here dealing with people who like are trying to find their lost. They're dealing with people who have been like murdered, right? So you're dealing with like that grimy stuff. And because it's a spirit, and because Atoners are spirit medium, they feel that rage that a spirit feels. They feel that emotion, and that person's anger, their hurt, that shit, that becomes the atonement. Like they take that on it, and that's what powers them. That's what gives them that edge in it. That's something that spirit mediums as a whole do, and Atoners take that and then they basically almost forge it like a bullet, and that's why they do have a lot of like weaponry when it comes to that, because there is a sense of taking that anger and that connection to the spirit and weaponizing it. But it becomes okay, at least in the mind of the Atoner, because they're weaponizing it for, you know, they're the person who is taking vengeance for this person because you all didn't know that. The Atoner's the one who in a weird way comes to guilt the people, to be like, this happened in your house and nobody did anything, you know? And that's the kind of message in it. They're not there to like to be kumbaya and bring people together. Like they don't care. They're there for one purpose and one purpose only. Something bad happened and it never got finished. They never got caught. And when they say caught, they mean like caught by like these hands, because there's a sense of I am the law when it comes to Atonement. So like when it comes to the Department of Spirit Inquiry, they usually don't call Atoners first because of that reputation, but also when shit gets real and there's people that you just can't simply bring in, guess who you call? The Atoners are in a sense like, if you were to imagine like yeah, Homvo was joking about Law and Order, Remember Me. Like if you were to think about it like that, that's that dramatic pause where they're like, don't say it, Captain. We have to call them. You're like, oh shit, like that's, you know, like that's a Atoner, you know, and they show up and people kind of like, they're hushed around the office, they're like, you know, and the Atoners don't care. They're like, whatever. Like, we know what's up. Because on the flip side, as sometimes like extreme as they can be, they also are the ones who have seen the stuff, you know. They're the ones who, in a weird way, they see and deal with the dirtiest of the trash and take it out, and no one ever knows, and no one ever has to see it. So like they do see some like terrible stuff. Because in the world where you do have powers, there will always be someone who wants to use it wrong. Doesn't matter how good you can teach people, there will always be some person who just goes, cool, and uses to fuck people over. That can be really good at hiding it. And a Atoner kind of uses the cheat card of, cool, well, I'm using the spirit of one of your victims to find you. and end this. So Atoners are the ones who, like, in a grim way, they find like the serial killers before they get to like body 2 or 3. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of like murky shit that Atoners deal with. It's very rare for a toner ever to have to come around to like some case that's not murky like that, because that's the kind of stuff that builds a vengeful spirit. You know, because it's not just you don't become a vengeful spirit by just being petty, right? There's a lot of the things that carry over from being human, that carry with that human emotion, go away when you die. So yeah, you can keep in the sense of like, if the pettiness is who you are to your core, like you're just that person who, any situation, even involving yourself, you value things based on money or look. Yeah, that's gonna be part of you. That's gonna be your personality. That's gonna come out in what you say. That's not gonna come out in your core feeling, right? Because we're not just talking about angry. We're talking about a vengeance so strong that a human can feel it and take it and summon like a spiritual weapon, you know, with essentially a bullet with the murderer's name on it. Like that's the kind of like the sort of metaphysical stuff we're talking about here when it comes to Atoner. So in a weird way, like when Atoner shows at the town, like, and if you see that, you're like, oh, shit's for real. I hope he's just here for information, and the person not actually here, because he just, you know, you don't want that. Like, it's almost you could almost use it to like show off your town, like, haha, welcome to New Haven. We've never had an Atoner shown up. Like, it's that sort of thing. Like, it's that sort of element. Like, you know, shit's real. And on the flip side, you have your Spirit Investigator. In a way, it can be the same client, right? Spirit Investigators definitely do sometimes end up on the trail of something like a serial killer. But a Spirit Investigator is far more about justice in the sense of justice in the light of day, about having crimes exposed so that people know about it. They bring that peace to spirits by having their story told and having it written with the ending that's sort of happy that comes with the end of the movie, and you walk out in the trial and like, so-and-so has been indicated in 389 counts of being an asswad. Like that's the sort of ending that a Spirit Investigator gets, you know, and you get to be like, cool, like I died, but like we brought all this stuff down. Spirit Investigator is more likely to end up involved where someone got killed, but not necessarily like because of crazy gruesome serial killer way, but like you're walking down the street and you accidentally overhear a deal you're not supposed to. You accidentally know too much. That's the kind of stuff that leads to a Spirit Investigator, because they're not tied to the vengeance. They're not really tied to the anger. They're tied to the need for the truth. They're the person who can't sleep at night because they're like, Ace, and like, but why were they there? That's what gets a Spirit Investigator going. Like, so I definitely wanted to get a sense of that, like that almost like, I don't want to say classic, I guess it's kind of classic to me, but like that classic like noir detective in this trench coat and hat. But I didn't want it to be like this full of like human suffering. Oh, to me, I'm a man and I'm drunk, like. But I love the part of someone who's just so obsessed with the truth that they don't mind that they're not making a lot of money, because for them, like, it's not just something that they just like feel good about. It's something that they need. Like, they have to get to the middle of the truth. They're the person who finds a case while they're getting a hot dog, you know, at the park, right? Because they overhear something and the brain goes, that didn't add up. That's a Spirit Investigator. Dante style employment, exactly, you know? And they're the ones who find like who a Spirit Investigator is more likely to bring down like some big business guy or something like that, or they're the ones more likely to like expose and bring down a mafia. And a Toner is more likely to leave a body full of former mafia people, because and I don't want to say like Punisher versus Batman, because like I feel like that kind of dilutes the whole thing, but there is a sense of like, and a Toner is perfectly cool with like it being done with them being in the grave. If they live, all right, cool. Yeah, if this is a core thing, that's cool, whatever. Their mojo. Plus, they usually don't end up dealing with those kind of people. So in a weird way, like the things that motivate them both deal with spirits that have died, but in different ways for different things. And I also want to play with the whole, I don't know, I don't love like detective noir, but sometimes the detective, like the noir detective vibe, it just kind of cracks me up in a fun way. Like it's like over the top without being over the top, you know, like it's just full of like these props and images, but like they all kind of add to this feeling, right? You know, there's this, like no one's ever, I don't know how to put it, like I love the image of the, he's in like a kind of a dingy office because he doesn't make a lot and that's what he can afford, you know, whatever. Then anybody can be. And the hat, because the hat is just, it's just a cool prop. I don't know what it is, but like that classy hat, it's just, I don't know. I see the hat and I'm like, what's up? You're up to some stuff, you know? Footing around town, you know, asking the hard questions and being sort of like a pain in someone's side, you know, and just so enamored with the truth that they're willing to get into situations where most people. It's just it's a fun thing to play with, and so I want to have this atmosphere where it feels like you could be either one and fun and be successful, whatever your definition of success. But personally, at like their heart, they have different goals. Solving the case versus solving the problem. That's perfectly. Solving the case versus solving the problem. And every once in a while, you end up getting a toner and a spirit investigator in the same case. That causes problems. Sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on who they are, you know. Depends on like who has morals. Like sometimes you get a spirit investigator that doesn't have a problem with that per se, but like the truth can come out if they're dead. And the toner's like, well, I mean, we know the truth. Spirit investigator's like, that's not the point. And the toner's like, well, what is the point? Is it for us or is it for them? If it's for the spirit, then the trial doesn't matter, you know. And that I wanted to have that like sort of like difference in philosophy to the point where neither one can say who's right and who's wrong. They just kind of had to like grudgingly look at each other and like whatever. And of course there are those who just vehemently disagree and think that, oh no, like that's wrong. But I like to think that they understand that each one is needed more than they'd like to admit, you know. I was going to say that both Atoners and spirit investigators feel like they approach it as a justice thing based on what you've been saying, but it's a matter of how they individually feel where justice ends, I guess. Yeah, basically. That's such a shit. And it's I like the thought of it really being a world with moving pieces, you know, and that you don't really know who or what's going to show up, who's going to investigate a murder, because hey, like, I mean, this is outside of the scope of today's talk, but hey, when there's a murder, there's more than just an Atoner spirit investigator that just show up. Celestial shields get involved with that kind of stuff. So sometimes it depends on where you are, where the area is, and that kind of stuff, and it really just changes on the dynamic of the situation. There's a scene with Daredevil and the Punisher that I think touches on the two different approaches. Yep, and when he's chained up and they're having their whole philosophical talk. Very much so. Buddy Cop Swordsfall movie. I did start writing like the like the basic block of I don't know if it's gonna be buddy cop per se, but I liked the idea of two friends who both grew up not sort of like My Hero Academia, because I don't necessarily want it to be like a diaposed or anything like that. But they both grew up with the sense of like wanting to be about justice. And then one of them, I don't know if I want to do like the trope per se, but I feel like a close personal death is what really distinguishes someone from being an Atoner versus a spirit investigator, right? And I like to imagine that like the person who's a Atoner like lost someone and it wasn't in a way that like the typical rules and whatnot of the law wasn't able to really bring something satisfying, and it made them think differently about it. about how they both see justice, and one became an atoner, the other one became a spirit investigator. But they like met each other again later on in life and realized that like, hey, like we both kind of do really want to do better. So they start up a investigation service on the Isle, and they basically try to solve cases, but they always deal with the fact that they just feel differently sometimes about how to resolve a case. And so I thought it'd be fun. I don't know if I want to be like buddy cop per se, because I don't want it to feel like, I feel like in a buddy cop scenario, one of them has to be the joke, and I'm not a fan of that. So I'm gonna see if I can make it to where really more like a Mulder and Scully in a weird way. But yeah, different philosophies. Diametrically opposed in execution of justice. Exactly, But they both believe in it, so they can't ever really hate each other. Because if you believe in justice and you really dislike someone else who's bringing justice, even if it's just in a way that you don't like, but it's accepted in society and technically accepted in the law, so I thought that would be fun. So I have some ideas. Like I said, I have a cool idea for detective noir. I want to do like generally like for my stories, I try to be generally neutral because, like I said, I want to be inclusive. But I think there's definitely some projection of me because there's like a detective in me. So it definitely would. This one story in particular would be a guy. I think it's definitely a personification of me for sure. Well, it's just a detective sort of spirit investigator who's trying to bring good in Prime City that like seems like it has no problem just going, man, whatever the justice is on, it gets to. And he's just kind of like huffing it on the streets and in the places where it gets no love and whatnot, and just trying his best in almost a feudal sort of the worst. No lie, I'm in love with the Atoners. I am. They're gonna be fun. It doesn't help that their kit's pretty dope. Spirit Guardian summons, Spirit Firearms, permanent transfer wounds between targets, temporary ability. Who doesn't love that kind of stuff? But I want it to be also, because it's not just about combat, there's social stuff. So I wanted that to be something that gets to be played. I said it on Twitter, but Spirit Investigator is more my speed in that realm. Still love the Celestial Knight, most of them all. Fair. I mean, Celestial Shields, they're just hard not to make. Like, whenever you get that sort of vein of, your Paragon of Justice to come out in fun way. And that's the thing that I want people to have fun with in Swordsfall as well, too, is this sort of thought of professions linking up. Imagine how cool it would be where it's like, people talk about a buddy cop, but what about like a classic like revenge style movie, but it's like a Celestial Shield paired up with an Atoner. Like they killed their loved one, and you're just like I don't know, this is so much cool stuff you can do, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm really looking forward in a way to see, because it is something I thought of. Is there any multi-classing? So I get asked this a lot, and I really don't know how to tackle it. Here's the thing. On one hand, I 100% could see why multiclassing would be fun. On the flip side, with the way professions are, it's very much a thing where it's more likely that I won't say you can't multi-class, but you would have to seriously figure out how you would even be able to multi-class certain stuff. Because like I said, for instance, Celestial Shield, you're going to have a really hard time multi-classing without being a Celestial Shield first and something else second. So what is most likely going to be what I have thinking right now in terms of a game, because it's really just a game sense. In a Swordsfall type of thing, meta sort of thing, you don't really see that. Like, you never are really two things. You may start off with something and fall out of love with it, but because there's very much a spiritual connection, you're kind of within the path that you're in. Like you really don't go from being an invoker to a spirit medium. It's a little deeper than that. So if there is latitude, it's within that chain. So I have had it to where I do have a story to where there's a celestial shield that learns some Mabar stuff, but wouldn't call himself a Mabar. His different, and that's why I want to say it's like a profession. It's that sort of, sure, you can dabble in both of these things, but it's going to be different from someone who just did their whole. And so I haven't decided how that plays into. For the most part, I really wanted to make it more about your group. So rather than it be about multi-classing, I wanted to be a little bit more Guild Wars 2 style, where it's more about the combinations that you do. Like one of the things that I've already started building into the system that I'm really looking forward to playing with soon is like I want it to be a sort of, if anybody, I don't know if anybody has played Summon of Kings, which not enough people have played Summon of Kings. You can kind of tell that the fighting, the system in itself, I kind of modeled in a way off of a fight, in the sense that it's modular. I do that for a reason, and one of the big reasons why are the way they are, this pool is the way it is, and the reason why some of the Kings seems heady at first when I tell you stuff like opener and transition, but that's because those are global tags. I want you to be able to know what you can do with someone else, because I left things open in a way that I really hope encourages people to do things together to get maximum. One of the classic examples I like to use is the sense of like Mabar with like a celestial shield or something like that. Because Mabar are all about being beefy, strong, just they're the Zangiefs. It model them off of this freaking rest. It's badass. But so I wanted to have a sort of thing where people combo together. Because let's say you have a party and you have a Mabar and a Dominga. And Dominga are your sort of, or martial arts dude. They're your, anything that you would think of hand-to-hand combat, that's their jam. That's what they do. So as part of their kit, what I have for them is a little bit more toward, how I put this? I like to think of it like in a fighting game, you have it to where you have people who do like corner pressure and stuff like that, right? Or like quick hits and stuff like that. That's the Dominga. Like they're in there to like, boom, like open up, like hit fast, they get in quick, like they're your skirmishers. And if that gives. Okay. So they have moves that do stuff like temporary take someone off their feet. And it's not that technical. It just says like, hey, like, flavor wise, they kicked you and you're off the ground, and that's why you can't do it. And that's kind of how Swordsfall works. I leave the technical stuff in the flavor, and it's just, why is this a stupid board? It's just, this is your flavor. And so one of the things Mabar can do as a separate thing, because they're wrestling, Zangief field, is I've always loved the Zangief powerbomb. So I was like, cool. They're my big wrestler guys. They get a cool powerbomb because fuck yeah, why not? Well, have it on their powerbomb move to where they get a bonus if their opponent's already in the air. And I just try to do that to where people have a reason to use one move in one way or the other, or maybe they're trying to get to someone. And by just giving like these little free, like little bonuses if you're in a situational, it's a little bit like Final Fantasy where it's like, I don't have to be from behind, but from behind I get a bonus and I want that bonus. If it's a whatever fight, the hard fight, that's when you really care about all your bonuses. And you're like, oh my god, what are my bonuses? And I try to make it like that. So basically, Dominga could literally kick someone up in the air, Rock Lee style, and then Mabar could grab him, powerbomb. And so What I want is for people to work together to get all your cool, fun stuff rather than I need to multi-class to do all the things myself. It's like, nah, pair up with their homies, like do that kind of stuff and it'll make your stuff more effective. My goal is to have it to where like for all intended purposes, you could arrange your party so that someone else can fill in someone else's deficiency. And I build classes with their own deficiencies that make sense. There's certain things that my board cannot do because that's just not what they do, you know? And so I'm trying to get it to really where it feels like you have a reason to work with your party, work with your friends, talk about stuff, do stuff together, you know? And rather than it just be like thinking about only what you can do and only what you can do. So I haven't decided multi-classing. That's kind of why I'm leaning away from it. Other than stuff like, well, you know, my character started off as this and then changed their mind into this. Right now, I'd rather have it be about what the party. Yep, need to buy still. I know Chili did because he's the good one. Hit includes hands. Hit lefts, rights, and uppercuts. It's true. It's true. It does include hands. Because I based, you know, Dominga a little bit off of Dambe, which is an African sword and shield, but it's your hands, right? But then I also wanted to give them more stuff, so then I kind of made it like that's like their bread and their butter, but then like they get to shift between like other martial arts. Instead of having to be like, this is my monk guy and here's this other style, like the Dominga are your one-stop shop martial art. And then you can create your own flavor if you want to be this or that. But they're all going to be Dominga. I just wanted to... I don't like to spread classes like that. I spread them more philosophically than... Yeah, so that's like my goal with that. And that's always how the profession should always feel like. And I think people have noticed by now, like there's always a profession that just sounds like it goes good with another profession. That's on purpose. To be a world where it feels like people work together. You know, you walk into, especially like something like the Department of Spirit Inquiry. It's a place where I can literally imagine you walk in, right, and it's a spirit medium at the desk. You know, it's a diviner who greeted you at the door. There's soul writs that work in the library. You know, and a toner just walked in with a bounty. A spirit investigator's at the door. You know, like a celestial shield is here to talk about this thing he found out in this other town, and it's just a, you know, it's a world, man, and everybody works together. Sometimes because they have to, sometimes because you got no choice, sometimes because it's better together than apart, you know, just various reasons. And so I'm just trying to think of ways to not just enforce that, but make it fun. I want it to be the game where like you're looking forward to like setting up with your friend and be like, oh, do you still have move X? You're like, yeah. Oh, if you do X, then I can do Y. And it's like, oh, and your friend's over here, does she be like, oh, guys, if you do X, Y, I can blah. And the GM's just like, they're all dead. Oh, my NPCs are dead. Cool. But, you know, like, that's the life, you know? But I wanted that to be the fun. Doing cool stuff with their friends. This reminds me of my biggest gripe with people hate of 4th edition. Like a system that says this is what mechanically happens, but leaves it up to the player of what that looks like. Exactly. You know? Oh god, Brandon, give me flashbacks to Street Fighter 5. Hey, you know I do. I respect the flex, but Zangief is scary. Zangief is a beast, bro. Like, love Zangief. A tornado. Group tactic. Exactly. You know, all about that life. Also, yeah, reaction type setups like that are great. I have fun with them. And also, one of the things that I added in too was there are some moves, and you can see this is some of the kings. I couldn't pull out this stuff because I want it to be there, and I hope that it makes more sense as people start to play with it and read. But I don't necessarily dictate. There are some moves you do not have to take on your turn. For me, I think of turn as when you make your action. And because making your action leads to other stuff, like that's the essence of turns. But I also wanted to have this fun stuff to where you can do stuff off your turn. In fact, I have one of the classes I'm working on kind of off. I don't want to talk about it right now just because like I haven't out yet enough to feel like I can take my. But I have a class that works primarily heavily off of being off their turn, as almost like being a foil to enemies, or just as a way to be a cool support. Sometimes the best way to be a support is not on your turn because you have to wait. Sometimes the best support is like right then and there. So I wanted it to be a thing. I'm playing around with it. I don't know how it'll go, but it sounds fun right now, and I like where it's going. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of like playing with stuff with that in a more of a MMO fighting game sense, but I very much understand tabletop mechanics. I've played enough of them. I have stuff that I don't like and stuff that I like, so I definitely want more of it to be. I'd rather you spend more time talking about stuff with your party than rules. Not because the rules are bad or they're clunky or any of that stuff, but just because like they're intuitive enough because of the world that it's in. But, like some stuff you don't have to check the book because you're like, oh, I get it. So if X is this and Y is that, okay, cool. And I try to build like that. Once you get it, it kind of. TTRPGs would be so much more fun if there were more systems that encourage players to act together instead of doing their abilities separate. Especially when the party can set the plays. And like that's one thing that I've always loved. Like I'm always the person in the game. I'm trying to like pair up with someone to do some cool stuff because that's where the magic happens for me, at least. Real talk, him talking about it just put me in mind of like Breath of Fire 4 and Tales of Symphonia. I love Tales games. Tales of Vesperia is one of my favorite games of all time. I love that game so much. That game is so underrated. Spell combos in use in Arts Ahoy, and especially like Vesperia had some really cool ones. And then I haven't really talked about soul writs lately, but soul writs are another of the spirit professions, and it's a little bit similar to the others, but also different. So if you think of like a toner as like the man in black, your sort of revenger, and if you think of like spirit investigator as your detective, then the soul writ is kind of like a necromancer meets a librarian, and it's probably like one of like my more like unique kind of classes because it's like everybody loves the concept of a necromancer, but if you think about it, a necromancer is just like a low-key like slave owner, and not about that life. So I was just kind of thinking about it in terms of like, how do you be a friendly necromancer? What? How do you necromance with consent? And that's kind of like how I ended up coming around to like the idea of the soul writ. So if an atoner takes vengeance for wayward souls, and if a spirit investigator finds closure for a soul, soul writ is a collector for souls that are just lost. They didn't die tragically or bad. They just dead and lonely. They died. Like they're the spirits who are like aren't mad. They're just like I didn't have family. I had no one to really care, and like I mean, there's as sad as it sounds, there's always people who fall homelessness or around you just dying. And you're older, and that's you, and that's left. That's what soul writs do. Soul writs collect souls who just cannot move on and they have nothing. So before they may go vengeful, before they can be used, soul writ collects them, puts them in, literally it's called a writ, and basically a book. Basically the soul writ more or less like takes the encompassing soul, puts it in this writ, in this book, and this book is basically a person's story. In a sense, that spirit gets a sense of vindication. And so there's a whole huge library within the Department of Spirit Inquiry. The library of souls. Some souls, some people actually like sign themselves over to the library, like it's a sort of retirement home, I suppose, for some people who are like, I don't want to be called back. When I die, like I just want to be out, but I don't mind people knowing my story, and so it's like a necromancer. And because like a soul writ has a positive relationship with those souls, they actually can and summon them and interact with them, and it's a positive thing because like once again, like they want to be in life, they felt like they can give back. So people oftentimes, at least in my opinion, they underestimate how their knowledge is. That just because you didn't do something that had something shiny or said, so doesn't mean that there are things that you have done or things that you know that you might not even know how important it is. And that's what soul writs keep track of. Like they understand that, you know? So they inscribe all this person's memories into this sort of writ. And they are in a way like a keeper of secrets, right? Because any soul that they put into a writ, technically they have to read the book to inscribe it. So within these soul writs, memories of all these different people's lives, and they can call on them as they need to. They're like Necromancy meets librarians, like in a fulfilling way. Because like I don't know if it's because like I just have like a real love for libraries as a kid, but like in a weird way, I feel like librarians really are like key souls in the world because you find yourself. I'm the kind of person like I walk in the library and I get physically but feeling like I'm around all this knowledge just pumps me the fuck up. I just imagine it's like that, but for someone who really like cares about what happens to people and want someone's life. What words do? Like all these ideas. I'm so tired of necromancers being inherently evil. 100% agreed. Every time that sound plays, my mind literally yells, Gundam? Yeah, the new type sound, I know. So we've been listening to nothing but like number 12 because I'm like obsessed. I mean, we all want to be remembered, and who lives, who dies, who tells your story. Kind of like a DNR, but for revivals. Yeah, basically it is. Speakers for the Dead, much more accurate versions. Agreed. Have you read The Archived by V.E. Schwab? I have not. Interesting. I'll have to look that up. The Archived. I like that name. Kind of thought about making like a group called The Archive, but I already have enough like. Sometimes it's hard not to. I love playing with words like that. Let's see. I guess since we're talking about souls, what else should we talk about? I guess talk about other souls. Let's see. What else do we have? There is. I haven't really talked about dead quivers. This is what happens when you have too many cool ass classes and you're just like, not enough time to talk about all the cool stuff, my cool ass game. So as far as like formal sort of like investigators into the dead, that's pretty much like your main ones, like your soul writ, your atoner, your spirit investigator. That's kind of your jam. Question: how does the writ find the lost spirits? So most writs work for the department. That's just, it's easy. Not to say that they all are, but for the most part, like for someone who really wants to do that on a scale, it's hard to do it outside of the department. People send their stuff to, like their inquiries to. So most of them get it via that. The big thing to remember is that they're all spirit mediums. It's just that these professions are, it's like saying, you know, a neurologist or something. A doctor, but a specialized doctor. But part of being a spirit medium as a whole in Swordsfall means being attached to the spirit realm. You would have been the kind of kid who would have seen the ghosts as a kid before anybody else. Yeah. Because even then with like spirits, like you can't see all spirits at all times. Like there's rules to that, but spirit mediums always seem to have a lower low and a higher high of stuff. So Sometimes it's just not like a spider sense per se, but it's like driving down the road and it's like you hear the like a little thing in your head. It's like, look over here, like or something's off. Like spirit mediums have when it comes to souls. So most of it is that inquiry stuff like that. And like I said, like people tend to say so. If like, let's say you're a spirit medium and you've detected a soul because you're walking on the street and you see something, like that. There's a lot of sort of happenstance that happens because that's also how you get legends about stuff, is because there's not always a good way to track them down. There's no like lost spirit detector. But it's definitely a society I try to write where to see something, say something. It's just up to you to be able to track that down. Like you, like, oh yeah, this route. I totally pretty sure I saw a lost spirit on the corner of 12th and Main. Cool, you go to 12th and Main, there's no spirit there. It's not that the person's lying. You're like, did they wander? What was up? So then that becomes your own like little adventure of trying to find that. And that's kind of what people spend their life doing in a weird way. Soul writs definitely are some people who might even go out of their way to find lost souls. So whether that be going to places where they know things are going on, like it's I like to think there's a sort of practicalness to it. There's a people find ways of doing what they want to. In Taiko, is that more common? Like, is seeing a spirit not really a big deal? Seeing a spirit is the least big deal in the list of big deals. Like, there's spirits, period, 100%. There's technically a third of the professionals in the world deal with spirits. And depending on where you are, it's more likely to be bad omens if you don't see spirits. Like I said, in Grimness in particular, if you're a part in Grimness and there's no spirits around, you're like, only bad things happen where there's no spirits. You know what I mean? So it's all about like there's a culturalness to it. There's a cultural bit I try to put on these. And Karu, like people feel different ways about it. Like you're in, because spirits are more random. Karu's more of a place where someone might like to be, a place where there's no spirit. And this is kind of what I think I said all this stuff before earlier, but I guess I'll repeat. But like in Vinyata, like you have where for them the sign is a good Passover. So to see a random ghost kind of means that you all messed up doing your rights, and stuff like that. So I try to make it more like that. I really like that as you. What's up, Sable Radio? Just stopped in to follow since you were in my suggested channels, but I'm live right now with Lady Snipe Shot. Ooh. I love cultures and traditions about honoring and speaking with the spirits of ancestors. So this whole topic is right up my alley. Hell yeah. Like, I love that kind of stuff. Because I feel like that's the kind of stuff that really brings you together, like in a weird way. Like it's the stuff that we're into, the traditions, stuff that make us that we tend to really like bond with people. This reminds me of those trees that are said to be spirits of people in their community, and that they had to look over. Oh, the Joshua tree. There's a few trees that are like that.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch.
The Joshua tree is one of them. That's said to be one that's over people.
This one was an.
Well, Joshua tree is. You might be talking about the ones that I based off of like my somber trees and stuff like that.
Maybe. They were.
Yep. That's what I based my somber trees on. Yep. But yeah, they're big, they're thick, like they have no leaves or anything. Like they're almost eerie looking, but they're not eerie looking. They're only eerie looking because we've never seen anything like that in the US. I might start bringing like pictures to this show because I would check it. But I'll look at the name, I'll throw it. But they're sweet looking. People have already said it, but the whole idea of death is only the beginning is my favorite. I love that stories can continue. Me for sure. I don't know why, but I'm getting to the point in my life where I get like a mini existential crisis when I think about death. Like, I don't know. Like I'm definitely at the point in my life where I'm like, I'd be okay with living for like another like 200-300 years. Like I know we're quote unquote worst timeline, but give me time. Like I'm all about changing this. So for me, it's fun, and this saxophone in the song just hit me. Just that's the reason I love Cowboy Bebop. I'm like, what saxophone? Game distracted me. These all the references. That's one of the things I'm gonna put together. I need to finish my article. I have like way too many half-done articles, but I'm gonna put together some references and that. And
How do you like it?
yeah, I get asked about it all the time. So at this point in May, I could probably do a whole book of references for Swordsfall, to be honest. But I don't know. Lately, I've really been thinking about in terms of like life after death, and just like not like a spiritual way, but just like I don't know how to describe it. Not necessarily practical either, but like in just like a tangible sense, I guess. And in a weird way, I like to solve my problems in Swordsfall. And so I was kind of I thought about in a weird way like how assuring it might be to feel like you can call on people who've already done it. Like actually call someone. Not like in a phone sense, but like in a spiritual sense. You know, like we've all had that moment where like you feel like you're out of sync and you're like, I wish someone knew what I was going through. And so for me, I think it was comforting to think that it's a world to where you really could call up your nana or your great granny or someone who you heard about to be like, I have this going on in my life and could we chat? You know, and maybe that feeling like you still can help future generations. I feel like, especially as I get older per se, I find myself more and more interested with trying to leave something good for another generation. You know, like, you know, I really, I don't mean that like in an ego sense. I know people saying an ego, but I don't know, man. I think about what it was like as a kid to be like, if only X, if only whatever. And it would be nice to be able to be that person who can be, you know, like, and also in a sense, giving it a world that good things never really have to go away, you know, like where good people and good souls can stay around. It can be a source of inspiration, you know, like the equivalent of being able to actually like call up Martin Luther King, you know what I mean, like stuff like that. And it always makes me think as a writer in terms of what problems would be solved if you couldn't lie about someone. If you could actually call up to and be like, Martin Luther King? No, he's, hey, MLK, what do you think? He's like, this is bullshit. You're like, see? See? You know? And it's kind of like a fun stratagem to kind of play around with, like, in a way, it made me challenge the fact that so many of the things that we kind of do, that we hate, that we take for granted, we do because we can get away with it, because we can lie, because once you're dead, that's it. So when I thought about Swordsfall, and especially once I realized I wanted to make it a little bit more positive, you know, like I knew 100% it wasn't going to be some dystopia because I just can't. But I knew I wanted to be more light than dark. It's just a place to where like you're invested in keeping it that way. No, I wanted it to be a world where like it doesn't feel like it's terrible and these things happen. It's just that sometimes bad things happen in our good place and we have to stamp that shit out. You know, like we were the heroes keeping everything great. Like in a real sense, like I really wanted it to have that sense to where like they're celestial shields, not cops, because like they're there to be the shield, you know, not to be a hammer, and they take that serious and has oomph to it, and you know, and then it kind of be that world. And I feel like incorporating spirits and in a way giving them agency as well, that really goes a step further. That sense that there's a completion, that you live a good life, you do good things, and if somehow something happens to where you die in a way that's not okay, that will still take care of you, you know? It's the ultimate, it takes a village and it just doesn't end when you die. no, it makes me feel good kind of thing. And I think it's like a weird sense of hope, even though it may not be something that we can necessarily have in like a reality. But I feel like in a fictional world, it's a breath of fresh air. At least for me, it's cathartic. It's nice to have a world where it's like I don't have to be like, well, can I have this because people are dicks? And it's like, nah, we can do this because the average person's a good person on Tycor. And in fact, because the average person is a good person, that's what makes really, really evil people, if you think about it, right? If you have a world where the average person does the see something, say something, be a good person, narc shit out, that means that your average, just generic variety douchebag kind of doesn't exist. Or if they do, they get popped really easy. Does that mean that people are automatically good? It just means that the ones that are gonna be bad have to figure out how to really be good at being bad, or else they'll get caught. In a weird way, I like it, and this is something like that gets brought up in various parts of philosophy. That's kind of why you have the concept of the greater the good, the greater the bad. Not necessarily because it's some like, oh well, being good creates some bad, some Joker BS shit. It's more or less like, nah, like in a sense, you have Darwined a way to a perfect villain because you've made it to where only the good villains can survive. Only the craftiest criminals can get away with it. Like that's what happens when you really are on your shit about stamping out bad things, about keeping down crime and being a good person. Like that's kind of what happens. So that's why in Swordsfall, I feel like be a world where you have people that need to be protected because you know like that's kind of what happens. You trade more things are everything is bad for most things are good, but when it's bad, it's bad. And that's in a weird way, concentrated the evil, I guess, in a weird way, because all that stuff really comes from human behavior, and that's one of the things I really liked about what they did in parts of My Hero Academia, especially with Pain, is this concept of it's not just an absence of good, that sometimes evil is in itself its own living entity that has its own thoughts and feelings that can be evoked that people will want to champion, and justice in its own weird way. And we see that in real life. Kind of nice to see that in anime. So Swordsfall is definitely in that place too, and that's why you have criminal organizations, because that's how they survive, because you do have badass celestial shields running around and Atoners and spirit investigators, and if you're not on your criminal shit, you will get taken out. And so because of that, the criminal element in its own way is one of the things I hate the most about sometimes media is they always show criminals as having like no trust, no loyalty. Even though we have seen time and time again in history that that's not true. But one of the things that happens in Swordsfall is like the criminal organizations are so disciplined. They're highly disciplined. In fact, like they might be better well run than the good guys. Why? Because they have to. And the sloppy ones aren't around very long. So there's like constantly example of like how not to be a criminal, and they just take it as cool. That's how you fuck up. See that, kids? Don't do that. And in a weird way, the good guys have also, in a way, trained the bad guys in how to be good at what they do. That's a fun concept, and that's kind of also why the spirit stuff comes into play more, because it kind of keeps certain things from being the perfect crime. Because cool, if that person's dead in the spirit, there's still a way to catch you. There's still a way to bring justice. Can you be the perfect criminal when also their spirit can narc on you? Changes the game. Changes what it means to be like high class criminal, I guess you. I guess I should read chat. I think that's also why I love Nordic mythology so much. Your story doesn't really stop after death. Exactly. 1,000 times, yeah. Leave a better world than you inherited. Every day, I feel like white people calling it MLK with his response like, fuck you, you're cool, fuck you, I'm out. I feel like he would. He was, at this point, he'd be like, no. Get my name out of your mouth. To actually protect and serve. Exactly. I'm fine with this vision of this world. I'm glad, because I'm kind of into it. Other magic powers used by criminals to thwart those things. So technically, the only thing that would be like a good guy exclusive thing would be a celestial shield, and that's just because it's trained in a way that makes him. Other than that, an Atoner technically doesn't have to be a good guy. I just right from that perspective, but like, this is where like you have to ask yourself, like, okay, what happens to a soul who dies who is an evil person? Get atonement? Makes for interesting bad guys, right? Like I said, as much as people think that I'm like hypercritical of stuff, I'm just as hypercritical of my own stuff. And that's in a weird way, that's kind of what makes it so strong, is like I'll sit there and be like, I'll blast holes in my own stuff all day. I'll boom. I'm like, how does that make sense, Brandon? Why'd you put that there? What about this? And then I challenge myself to like patch my own holes. Shoot the cannon again, and I shoot until there's no holes. And I'm like, see? Put a new paint on it. I'm like, see? Perfect. Perfect the first time. They don't have to know about like the 89 times I blew a hole and it sunk to the bottom and I raised it back up. Oh, hey, well, I've got nothing published. I always go in. Like, my goal is always, though, to get the boat to sea. You know what I mean? I think sometimes people fall in love with shooting holes in their stuff and not patching it. You know what I mean? So I try to be just as dogged about patching my holes as I do shooting my holes. The whole like, it's almost like I think about what it must be like at the end of like an episode of Mythbusters. I just finished like my huge giant rewatch of Mythbusters. I think it took me like what, 2 months, 3 months? How long was it watching Mythbusters? It was like 2 months. I started watching before in the pandemic.
It was 3.
Yeah, it was. But I started.
You were watching it like back.
Oh yeah, that was all I watched, like back to back to back. But yeah, so I just finished my giant Mythbusters rewatch of like all 18 seasons, whatever, and it got me thinking. I was like, man, no big deal, whatever. It's... Hey, if I could watch how many seasons of NCIS, then I can gladly watch 18.
You can do anything.
But no, it was always like the, you know, who's got to clean up at the end of a giant experiment, you know, and how shitty that job must be. You know, you just blew up giant stuff. You're like, and they walk into the sunset, and someone's got to clean it, right? So I just think about that to myself when I shoot holes. I'm like, you can shoot as many holes as you want, Brandon, as long as you know you got to clean this shit up at the end of the day. And it's like, okay, maybe I'll put the cannon away right now. We'll come back tomorrow. That's where I need to get the patching slow. I think you just have to learn to. I treat patch my holes like it's fresh creation. You know, sometimes if that makes sense. I'm just weird. I just enjoy what I do, and I don't give myself too much shit. I mean, I give myself shit. I just know that it has to be for a constructive reason. If not, then I'm just shitting on myself. We don't do that anymore because depression. So, and that's kind of how I keep myself in check. I'm just like, okay, like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? What's the end game, Brandon? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? And don't know if that helps. Let's see, what are we at? 135. We'll talk about dead quivers and maybe one more, and then we'll call them. People have questions, which I'm here for, as always. Answer those questions. I'm looking through my secret files right now. See, there's Soul Carver. We can talk about that. Dreamweavers. Possession Dreamweavers. Change that card. Oh yeah. Lemaine. I barely have talked about those lately either. I have a whole cast on Lemaine. They're wildly different. The norm. Yeah, medium. Yeah, okay. So the last of the sort of quote unquote DPS Dead Quiver. Cool name. When the art we actually had on the Kickstarter was pretty cool looking. But so basically they are spirit archers, I guess you could say. Basically the concept is that they are archers, bowmen, whatever you want to call them. Trying to get away from bowmen for obvious reasons, but archers that summon the spirit of legendary archers and basically can borrow their abilities while summoned. Kind of plays back into the ghost or your friend in Swordsfall sort of thing. Some of them can even have like ghost minions, like so literally like rolling around with like old school archers of the past as like your homies. Experts at any projectile weapon. And they can use basically arrows made out of ether, so they actually do not have to use expendable rounds. Ghost arrows, spirit arrows, invisible arrows, however you want to think about it. Pew from the soul. So that's Dead Quivers. I came up with that idea while I was playing Path of Exile one day. That one was fun. I like the idea of a little bit of a Fate Stay Night sort of thing, you know, except less getting hijacked by history. More like being called by, you know, the new gen to help out. The Goku over Gohan sort of moment. So. Yeah, because if I talk about Lemaine, that's gonna take. Basically, what you need to know about Lemaine when it comes to the spirit possession is they deal with deity more than. So if you think about spirits, we usually think about spirits in terms of regular people. Well, like these are the sort of spirit mediums before the god, and not because gods dying necessarily. You know what I mean? Think about it more in terms of not every deity or divine one is currently interactable on Tycor. Some of them did not come over to corporeal form. Some of them don't have a form that humans understand. And Lemaines are the ones who are that voice. If you would think about the fact that, let's say, maybe there's a god that is the wind, but is the wind, the Lemaine becomes the voice of that. Basically, deity will find a Lemaine and hijack him low-key, be like, hey, human, you can hear me. I got some stuff to tell you. And that's what Lemaines do. So, Lemaines are a little... generally, you know when it's a Lemaine because they just seem not quite there. They're there, but they're not there. Like, I almost imagine it as in terms of they can hear this frequency that's too high for other humans, and so sometimes they're listening to that channel versus like the ones that you speak. They can be a little distancy, but they're interesting. They're fun. We'll talk more about them more later. There are ones that I'll finish up more in terms of a game thing as I solidify deities, because what they do changes based on deities. So, the whole thing. And then the other one is the Soul Carver, and they're like your artsy kind of soul class. So, not investigating or anything like that. What they do is they literally bring soul to art. They can transfer soul into a carving. So like, let's say, like, so one of the things I want to really get through with Swordsfall is the sense that cultures are different. People do different things for different reasons. Some souls like move on. Some souls like get lost, right? Some souls are immortalized, right? And that's what soul carvers do. Like, they can put souls into a carving, and that itself can become a guardian item, or literally an item that you can use to tap into call to like deceased loved ones, stuff. There's like a principle that I found while I was researching that kind of got me thinking, and it was this concept that like in certain African lore, that an exceptional artist could actually steal your soul in the artwork, that like you could draw on a level that you weren't just recreating, you were encapsulating them into that medium. You stole their soul with the level of your work. And I thought that was a really fun concept, so I wanted to play with that. But they can also do, I also wanted to take a little bit about some of the ways that hoodoo gets sort of appropriated, and I wanted to take that and put it into something more authentic. So they can do the equivalent of what people would think of as like a voodoo doll, but instead of it being that, basically they can make a carving based on that person and can temporarily like control their actions using the carving. There's like that kind of stuff. So basically it's like art tied to his soul, but because they're primarily from Garuda, really about carving. So usually wood, but they can carve just about anything, depending on if they have the tools for it. Kind of like Forge Whispering, but more handcrafted. Hey, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it, Dane and Twilight. How's it going? What were y'all doing today? I'm over here talking about people putting souls inside of carvings. Twilight raid. Are we talking about like Twilight? We have to declare a team. Glad you're doing well. Welcome to Tycoon. I feel like there was one more thing. Oh, they can also, soul carvers can also create their own little mini carvings. Like basically what they do essentially, and I guess it kind of sounds like Harry Potter, but it's not. But it's almost like you're basically putting like a piece of your soul into that artwork. It actually becomes alive. But it's not like a Horcrux or anything, because if the carving gets destroyed, you get your piece of your soul. It doesn't like. Yeah. I'm having like avoid spoiling myself for some stuff, because there's some stuff I want to have as like extra secrets, you know, be like, ooh, I didn't even know this is a thing. So I'm trying not to like give the whole Monty, but yeah, that gives a sense. Welcome. So any questions about any of the classes? Like Soul Carver, I don't want to talk about Lemaine, so don't answer about Lemaine. Soul Carver, kind of like a Soul Picasso. Dead Quivers are Spirit Archers. I feel like we know Atoners and Spirit Investigators by this point, because they're kind of becoming like two of the main staples. Like I knew they're both gonna be popular. Well, I knew Atoner was gonna be popular. I was worried that people were gonna be like, oh, Spirit Investigator, who wants to investigate? I want to kill stuff. But I'm glad that people were super about that. Because like I don't want things to be just about combat, but I also don't want to tell people who can't have combat. I just want to be like, hey, there's other fun stuff to do besides stabbing things. Okay. I mean, it's like, I mean, combat's fun, but combat can also get old, you know? Like, after so many rounds, eventually you're like, cool. I already know what I have to roll. Like, we want to do other stuff. So at least want to make it to where the game itself can be variable and it can be played in different ways and has that feel to it, you know. And even if people decide to have something combat heavy, they don't have to. If they do, it's because they wanted. If I didn't hear it, my bad for maybe asking a repeat. So in the vein that Atoners and Spirit Investigators do while investigating and crime busting, what sorts of shenanigans do Dead Quivers get up to? So Dead Quivers are more on your, I don't want to say like military side, but archery tends to fall into like two categories. Either get it like archery for survival in terms of like hunting and stuff like that, or like archery for defense / off. Dead Quivers can fall into either one of those, but generally you tend to see Dead Quivers in military units or anything like that. Like especially that one in particular, Dead Quivers. They're not primarily, but they hail a lot from the Daihoma region, the Daihoma culture. And basically how that works is on the western part of Garuda, as you get closer to like the Enkai mountain, there's less and less humans, less and less of like the things that we depend on. And there's more wilderness, more animals, like you're closer to monsters. Mina, good God. As Mina drops what 20 gift subs. Thanks. Super appreciate it. Damn. I guess I need to be like twisted and start getting like some automated things, and like I don't even have like a / height. And people just type height in chat because damn, that's height. Hype. For real though, thanks Mina. I appreciate it. Want to know what you do for a living? Do you need a partner, a friend, an assistant? Make good coffee? I make nachos. I'm good to talk to. I'm just saying. Hypest of hypes. We'll give it a second to go through another couple of those. I think it's got like 5 more. Oh, no? Yep, nope, there we go. I wish Twitch would just like combine these together when they're like, oh, hey, it's hype time. Let's just put them all together. But no, it's just gonna do its thing for a while. You know. No, thank you. No, thank you. You do have a lot of stuff at TTRPG meeting, just in general. I appreciate that. I feel like half the time I'm just like, people are like, Brandon, do you need to? And I'm like, yes, because this is ridiculous. And I go to a corner, I'm like, one day. I think Stream Elements has the option of grouping mass gift subs. Yeah. CJ is over here is like, see, Stream Elements. What else I don't like about Stream Elements is why does it have to be in a browser? I'm really tired of things that have to be browser based. I don't want anything in my browser. I don't want anything online anymore. I'm really just like, can I just download a program and I don't have to? Or please. That's all. That's all from me. I love that. Just gonna keep going. Yeah, but that answer your question all the way. SJH. I feel like I don't remember. I don't remember if I was in the middle of it or whatnot. I lost track. But you know, the main thing is just that Oh yeah, you know, I was gonna play because it was Daihoma. 'Cause, yeah, and since Daihoma is on the western edge of essentially society, it has to deal more with like monsters and stuff like that, or I kind of think of them as like their culture that holds the line for a whole bunch of like humans and Garuda, you know. And so they're a little bit more focused on not necessarily military, but like they're a place who like they've come to understand that being strong is what's needed because the only way that you can protect people is through strength, you know. So Dead Weavers originate from that society. And same thing, they're also the ones that have like the minnows, the Dominga, like they, when it comes to fighting, that's what they do. And not just like in a barbarian, like we're here to fight and punch stuff. Like, no, like they really get into the concept of combat and the tactics and understanding how to do this and how to do that. And like, people would assume you're more likely to get in a fight with someone from Daihoma, but you're less likely to get in a fight with Daihoma. You are more likely to start some shit and get ignored until like they can't take it no more, and then you just get vaporized. And you go from like cool to like waking up a week later and you're like, what? And it's like, oh yeah, that drunkard that you were messing with, it was a Dominga. Foot came out and just, yeah, sorry bro. Like, that's what happens. So, that's where Dead Quiver come in. They're not really under the investigation, and they're more about, like, yeah, like, really in a sense, a weaponization of spirits, but, like, in a fighting spirit way. Like, and that's why I say, like, a sort of, Dragon Ball Z, Goku, Gohan sort of sense. It's, I imagine it's that fighter spirit that never died. So, being a great archer and master this craft, someone calling you down to use your abilities like that's the legend. That's what I was for. Like, yeah, and, you know, so a little bit of a Valkyrie profile feel to it in a way. The come to me, my noble Aunt Harrias and that thing, except for like, come to me, Sensei, and help me. Like, this song goes hard. Okay. We are nearing the 2-hour mark, which is kind of where I cut it off, even though we had like random stuff today. Sun's coming out, so not gonna lie, like I kind of want to go outside and stand in the sun for like a hot second. Yeah, we're gonna drop some links because for one, I'm a big fan of number 13. One of the things that I am dead set on is I am dead set on good artists that no one has ever heard of, people hearing about, because I'm tired. I'm tired of like no one ever knowing about cool people, and we're just like always listening to the same 80 companies. Anyway, we're not gonna get into that. The main thing is like we're gonna drop this link, and y'all gonna give homeboy a listen. Praise the sun. I've actually given serious thought to doing exactly that for my overlays, like building something up in Unity and then applying green screening on the capture to get transparency. So that'd be dope. You let me know, because I'm on board with that. Thanks for the follow, Mystery Cycle. Thanks for the follow, Dungeon Manager. I appreciate it. Yeah, give number 12 look through. That's who we've been listening to today. And then I guess I should drop off ye old link. Y'all ain't buying the books. No, we're just gonna have to fight. I'm just saying. I'm kind of proud of the main heist, and I think it's pretty badass. And I'm gonna just need everyone to like it. All right. Here's your chance for any questions before we wrap off. Which I had to say, I expect more questions. For as much as like people ask me questions on Twitter, on Twitch, no one ever asked me. Yes, and then review it after it. Exactly what CJ said. That was a jiffable moment. Someone would have to be taking gifs and taking clips for that to happen. Please do buy and review. Please. Really, it's just the reviews. Like, I won't complain. Like, I sell a decent amount of copies for like a dude who no one's really heard of for reviews. I don't know if we talked about this. I'll drop this little clip before we end, but especially for indie people, myself, reviews are life or death. When people see self-published, or especially later on, like let's say I want to actually do something with a major company, the only way that I can use any of this stuff that I've put out is if it has reviews. I've literally heard, and I can like literally send people like a link to. If you are an indie author, you have been on Amazon for 2 years and you do not have at least 30 reviews across your work, they won't even look at you. I've literally been told you may as well just leave it off of your inquiry. You have independent books and they do not have reviews. It doesn't even exist as far as a publisher. I think they're pretty damn awesome. And I want them to exist. I want to be able to walk into a media and be like, this is what I did on my own. So for me to do that, I need reviews. Not just buying stuff, which I super appreciate when people do, but reviews. Like the review rate's like less than like 5%. That's like how little people review, which not a condemnation, but just letting you know that, and this doesn't apply to me, it applies to pretty much anybody that's on the marketplace that is independent. We need those reviews. That's what stands us apart. It shows that not only do people read your work and buy your work, but they like it enough to come back and leave a review. And that hits. Like being an indie person, having a decent amount of reviews shows that you really have an audience. And that lets us be able to do stuff with bigger people without having to do stuff like sign away our rights to everything, which is something I never, ever will do. So I especially need your reviews, because if not, there will be a lot of means of me being like, yeah, I can't do that because I'm not giving you the rights. So being able to walk into a meeting and being like, bro, I got like 8 books on Amazon and every one of them has 30 reviews. Like, that's power. That lets me really be able to take charge of my life and Swordsfall's life and be able to do what I want. So, anyway, that's my thing. Reviews really matter. I just want people to understand that. Period. Like anybody, if you like an artist, no matter what platform they are, leaving a review will always be a good thing. You never have to worry about it, especially if it's on Amazon. Amazon reviews life or death. DTRPG same way, especially with the way that people can just fill stuff up with it, stuff like that. Reviews are like more important than buying it. You could sell 20 copies and have 20 reviews and do better than someone who sold 2,000 copies and 2 reviews. And that sounds ridiculous, but it is. The metrics on that's real. Especially like literally if you're like, hey, like every person who read my book loved it, then the publisher here is cool. We just need to make sure more people hear about it. Like that's what they wanted to hear. So like in a weird way, yeah. After working with customer service, I noticed how much feedback is important, and the review is a way to give feedback to the creator. Absolutely. And other people read reviews. They trust that. And if no one's heard of you, they're less likely to buy it. So having your first wave of people who know about your stuff and like your stuff leave reviews lets people feel better about buying. And that's not to say you don't have to be like fanny and be like, because people detect that. Just be, if you didn't like a section, talk about it. If you like the section, talk about it. Like just be authentically you. Preferably 4 or 5 stars. But I mean, like if you think it's a 1, I'll take it, and I will try my hardest not to do the 1, unless it's something racist. And if you leave a racist one, then like we can eat me. But you know that. Anyway, that's just Bill. What's today? Tuesday. So tomorrow, probably nothing. I got some stuff to do. Thursday though. I think Thursday instead of philosophy. Well, I say that. Who knows what could happen between now and Thursday? Honestly. But most likely on Thursday, if not next Tuesday, we're gonna go over some of the kings because we actually just go over it so that people end it more and more tables playing it and stuff like that. Yeah. If not, we might have something random philosophy on Thursday, but I really do want to talk about some of the kings and really kind of get more people into that and whatnot. Yeah. Some random gaming over the week. Don't know what yet. I want to finish Transformers Devastation. I know we started that on stream. Right now, I'm like knee deep in Final Fantasy 14. I'm just kind of enjoying that right now. We're going to get a Swordsfall FC started up later on tonight. If you're playing Final Fantasy 14, holler at me on Twitter, Swordsfall1 later on today, and joked up on that. Yeah. Other than that, check out the website, swordsfall.com. Check me out on Twitter, Swordsfall1. Man, that's the deets. That's the jam. Let's see who's streaming and we'll drop some people off. Anybody do anything in particular? Laurent. Urban Bohemia is playing Destiny 2. We can do that. Much going on this today, seems like. People go back to work or something today?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah. Guess people really had to go back to work. I feel people are safe out there. That shit worries them. Like, it really does. Okay. Getting the raid started. Alright. Thank you everybody for coming. If you do have to work, please stay safe. Wash your hands. 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. Just stay away from people. Swordsfall.com, Swordsfall1. We'll see you Thursday. I'm trying to get back on the regular schedule. When we get into Bohem's channel, if you wouldn't mind throwing up a Swordsfall raid, I appreciate it. I think that's everything. All right, everybody. Till then, have a good day. See you in Tycore. Bye.
Person that can chop and break down a crazy sample is